Welcome back to another round of Mystery Fabric Game. This week we have a lustrous and very smooth feeling textile with a very crisp hand. You can kind of hear how it rustles. That's called scroop in this particular kind of textile when it rubs against each other and makes that noise. When you wrung your fingernail along the grain line, you can hear a kind of but not on the cross grain. That's very telling in how this is made. Do you hear the difference? That's an important test for this particular kind of fabric. Next up, what we have is the crush test, which we'll crush it up in our hand for a short period of time and then release it. And you can see here that it had fairly moderate wrinkle resistance, which means that it's unlikely to have a weighted finish or have been treated with metallic salts, which is very good for its longevity and makes for a lighter hand to the fabric. And that's well regulated in law in the US of what can be labeled as this textile and how much weighting finish can be used on it. It's also very low in its static conductivity, so you're not terribly likely to get a shock from this, although a little bit more likely than last week's fiber. Next up, we have a burn test. To do the burn test, I will want to cut off a chunk of this to test so that I can use the rest of this for other experiments. We'll want a fire-resistant surface, as well as something to hold on to the textile while we're experimenting. You never know when you're going to get a acrylic. And I'm going to turn off the lights so that we have a better chance to see what's going on here. All right, so we can just barely see our textile here and our flame here. You can kind of just barely see it pulling back and curling away from the flame. Do you see it pulling back from the flame there? It burns slowly, and it self-extinguishes. Turn the lights back on and we can look at the black ash. It smells rather of burning hair. But you can see here that black ash, which can easily crush between your fingers. It's soft and dust-like. And there aren't any hard edges in here really, any more so than the usual crispness of that fabric. So I'm going to show this to you one more time. We have our flame here, our textile here. You can see it pulling away from the flame there a little bit. A fresh bit here, you can see it pulling back and curling up. And see how it puts itself out. And there you can see that dark kind of bubbled ash on the edge there. All right, so here we can see the cross-section of colored yarns on the warp as well as the weft, and where the blue yarns run into the blue yarns and the white yarns run into the white yarns and blue yarns run into the white yarns. One thing that I want you to notice here is that although this is a plain weave, and a tightly woven one at that, it's not an even weave. Do you see how the weft yarns make the warp yarns look like rectangles rather than like squares? So that is indicative of an uneven weave. The weft yarns are much thicker than the warp yarns. Here's that same section backlit. You can see how tightly woven this is, with very, very small distance between each of the yarns. So here, under slightly higher magnification, we can see the very, very fine filament of this particular fiber, as well as how low twist the yarn is. It's maybe 2 to 3 twists per inch. So here we're looking at this from being toplit, and you can see pretty easily here the unevenness of this weave, how the warp yarns are thinner than the weft yarns. This textile is harmed by strong mineral acids, resistant to organic acids, and dissolves in oxidizing bleaches. 100% acetic acid at 20 degrees Celsius does not dissolve it. Hey. 100% acetone at 20 degrees Celsius also doesn't dissolve it. 20% hydrochloric acid doesn't dissolve it, nor 100% xylene at 139 degrees Celsius, nor 100% dimethylformamide. This textile dissolves in a 20% solution of hypochlorite and a 70% solution of sulfuric acid at 38 degrees Celsius. This textile has moderate thermal retention. It scorches more easily in dry heat, which can cause yellowing and deterioration, but steam and press cloth can help prevent scorching when pressing. This textile has good abrasion resistance. This textile has moderate light resiliency, and exposure to UV light can cause yellowing and deterioration. This fiber has high tenacity at 4.5 grams per denier when dry, and 2.8 to 4.0 grams per denier when wet. It has medium elongation and medium elastic recovery. This textile has a high absorption rate at 11% weight gain, is hygroscopic, which means it absorbs moisture and minimizes temperature changes, making it more comfortable in cool and damp weather. It can water spot, though, if you have part of it dry and part of it wet, so you want to be careful about that, as well as the salinity of your water. It also has a low density at 1.25 specific gravity, and it loses 20% strength when wet. So here you can see that same blue warp yarn and white weft yarn at a higher magnification, with the cat bumping the camera. You can see the very low twist, and you're just barely starting to see the kind of shiny but not super shiny trilobal shape of the fiber in itself. So here's another warp yarn that isn't under tension, and we can see from the side of it instead of from the top, and you can kind of see where the weft yarns used to be, and you can kind of see it starting to relax and flatten out now that it's wet, which is kind of cool. So here we can see pretty clearly the filament nature of the fiber itself. We don't see any noil in there at all. No little fuzzy ends sticking out. So right here on the very edge of that blue warp yarn, we have a filament fiber that you can see. And you can kind of see the trilobal shape of it just barely right there, where you can see kind of the indent on the one side that long, very tiny filament fiber. And for the super nerds, this is what the chemical composition looks like. It is a fibron and has 15 amino acids in a polypeptide chain, and they are pleated loosely together and highly oriented, which leads to strength, with the occasional amorphous areas, which leads to elasticity.